I'm Natasha Kirchak, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, it looks like the Israeli government has narrowly avoided early elections. Israel is set to become the first country ever to legalize vaporizers for medical marijuana. And we loved them before they were famous, but the Israeli pop sensation Static and Benel are about to make it big time in America. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. It looks like early elections have been averted, at least for now. Word of a last-minute deal has just hit the media, detailing how Prime Minister Netanyahu seemingly moved away from snap elections, all in favor for a compromise on the ultra-Orthodox conscription law.
אמרתי אתמול שאעשה מאמץ עליון אחרון למנוע בחירות ולהמשיך לקיים את הממשלה הטובה בראשותי. ממשלה שמביאה הישגים אדירים למדינת ישראל. הבטחתי וקיימתי.
Under the agreement, the Knesset has moved forward the ultra-Orthodox Party's draft of a bill which would exempt Haredim from mandatory service in the IDF. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, who previously stood to topple the government with his objection to this bill, will now be able to essentially oversee the future version of the bill in the coming months. This has paved the way for the other wild card in the crisis, Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon, to have his budget approved before the parliament breaks for recess. This has been a tedious series of weeks, with speculation high that despite statements to the contrary, Netanyahu himself may have actually been orchestrating this whole crisis to arrange early elections. Analysts say this was very possibly the case, given that the Prime Minister is currently ensnared in numerous corruption scandals and may have benefited from elections now when his poll numbers are still strong, versus later after possible criminal indictments. Rumors of his own party threatening a mutiny against him at this time, however, may have swayed him away from pushing for snap elections. Either way, many are breathing a sigh of relief that the government will not dissolve at the moment and instead be able to focus on the larger issues at hand.
As if the United States and Israel weren't close enough, American and Israeli troops have just conducted a massive large-scale military drill right here in Israel's desert. The Juniper Cobra drill sees nearly 1,000 U.S. Marines training shoulder to shoulder with Israeli soldiers in the IDF's elite paratroopers brigade.
The drill also combined tactical integration with the Israeli Air Force, considered by most to be one of the strongest in the world. Participants followed a traditional Israeli procedure, conducting simulations in a fake mock-up Arab village. Israeli troops have a lot of experience in this kind of urban warfare, which offers a lot of expertise to American troops who don't have as much on-the-ground experience in this kind of terrain.
On these lanes you see in front of us is an American sergeant and an Israeli instructor. And what they do is they take the young soldiers and Marines through the environment and teach them how to see. And they teach them what to see when they were either in the Gaza Strip or somewhere else on the battlefield for us in Afghanistan and Iraq, and teach that young soldier what to look for. What does the open door mean? What does the item on the ground mean to you? And they get to hear it from both sides.
Though no one is hoping for an opportunity to see this put into practical use in an actual war, it's still nice to know that if it comes down to it, both sides have each other's back.
In a surprise move, U.S. President Donald Trump has now fired Secretary of State Rex Tillerson from his post and will be replacing him with former CIA Director Mike Pompeo. Here with more on the story is Abe Katzman, the counsel to Republicans overseas Israel. All right, so let's begin with why. Why did Donald Trump choose to fire Tillerson?
Well, thank you for having me. It's actually a good question, and as best as we know, you can only take so much of what is said at face value. But it seems that Secretary Tillerson was just not on the same page as the president when it came to a couple of key issues, and I think most important of those was dealing with Iran. And the common understanding is that he was more interested in preserving the Iran deal and was sort of running his own foreign policy. And the president doesn't like people doing things that he is not aligned with.
Is Mike Pompeo more suited to be the Secretary of State?
I think he'll be a good one. As far as I know, nobody knows anything about his skills in terms of diplomacy, but he's an extremely bright guy. He's incredibly accomplished. He was #1 in his class at West Point. He's got a military background, head of the CIA, Congress. He's got just a sterling resume, and more than anything else, I think that he knows how to communicate with the president, and that may be the most important thing. I think having his CIA background, his military background, that is going to add a great deal of influence in the rest of the world, even on top of what comes naturally just with the position of being the American Secretary.
Well, what are his stances on Israel?
Historically, they've been what I guess would be defined as hawkish. He's, for instance, to contrast him with Secretary Tillerson, I know that he was in favor of moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Secretary Tillerson apparently was not. When it comes to Iran, he is very much in favor of containment, if not undermining the country, the regime there. And I think that he's probably, as much as he sees eye to eye with President Trump, he also sees eye to eye with the current Israeli government. And I think actually with probably the majority of the people in Israel when it comes to understanding what the threats are.
All right. Well, it's certainly going to be interesting to see how he performs. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Now, here's a statistic that you may find shocking, but is no surprise to anyone who lives in Israel. The Central Bureau of Statistics has just announced that Israel has the highest birth rate of any country in the world. In fact, the country's birth rate has almost doubled over the last 36 years. Talk about a baby boom.
Over 80,000 infants were born here in the Holy Land in 2016. The average number of children per woman here is 3.11 kids, with Jewish women actually reaching 3.16 and Muslim women hitting 3.29. Those numbers are all well above the global average. We tend to see a whole lot of baby strollers in Israel, so this doesn't exactly come as a surprise to us. But considering Israel outranks huge Arab countries like Saudi Arabia and even Western countries like the US, it sure says a lot about priorities here in the Jewish state. One figure that's a little surprising is the average age of Israeli women when they give birth. In 2000, women on average first gave birth when they were about 29. But now the average has risen by a sizable year and 5 months. The new average is 30.4 years old. I guess that means your 30s are officially, well, in Israel anyway, the new 20s.
All right, now here's a bit of news that's giving some people mixed feelings. The man known as the bookkeeper of Auschwitz for his role as the accountant at the infamous Nazi death camp has just passed away at the age of 96. Oscar Groening was convicted a few years ago as an accessory to 300,000 murders at Auschwitz.
Originally, his jail sentence was delayed because it wasn't clear if the elderly man was of adequate health to actually serve out his 4-year jail sentence. But a court doctor declared him fit to serve last year as long as he received nursing and appropriate medical care during the time. His death at age 96 comes before he would have started serving that jail sentence. During Hitler's horrific final solution, Groening was a man at Auschwitz who ran all financial affairs at the death camp. He oversaw money taken from those killed or used as slaves in Auschwitz and sent it back to Berlin. Needless to say, his death strikes a very grim reminder here in Israel, where many of those wounds are still very fresh.
Israel is one of the only countries on earth where scientists can freely research the medical impact and benefits of cannabis. Despite recent changes in the law, the marijuana industry is still wrapped up in a lot of red tape, but now it looks like Israel may become the first country ever to legally approve marijuana vaporizers for medical use.
This is potentially a huge step forward in medical marijuana research and development for a few reasons. Until now, patients typically have to inhale cannabis by smoking it cigarette style. A vaporizer, on the other hand, eliminates a lot of the hazardous biochemicals you get from inhaling smoke from a flame. That's exactly why the Israeli R&D firm Cannabo Research is doing cartwheels now that their newest vaporizer, the VapePod, just got the go-ahead from the health ministry. But the vape pod might actually redefine cannabis treatment for another reason. The device would also allow doctors to accurately measure and administer precise cannabis doses to patients, something that, again, you can't do when you're smoking it. Breakthroughs in incredible cannabis-based treatments have been skyrocketing in Israel ever since the government lifted measures criminalizing the plant. But the stigma of some Knesset members against marijuana have put the industry in a bit of jeopardy. Last month, Prime Minister Netanyahu canceled a massive export of Israeli medical cannabis to the United States, allegedly so as not to upset U.S. President Donald Trump. That deal lost Israel an estimated $1 billion, and billions more could follow if and when the state does greenlight future exports. Thankfully, that hasn't stopped Israeli innovators from plowing ahead and making medical magic happen.
1 in every 69 children born in the United States is on the autism spectrum. These children face unique challenges every day, and that's why one Israeli company has now come up with an incredible new way to treat these amazing kids. Joining us with more is Dr. Dan Cohen-Vax from the Holon Institute of Technology.
Hello, good evening.
Thanks for joining us. All right, so tell us about what Calma Therapy is.
All right, so Calma basically started as a students project at the Faculty of Instructional Technologies, Holon Institute of Technology. And what we did there is try to create a simulated snooze land for treating children with a condition known as sensory modulation disorder. Just to say a few words about this condition, those children are challenged while transferring between different environments with different amount of stimulations.
Right.
So specifically, if a child like this transfers from an environment with a lot of noise, and then he comes to a quiet room, and so he will feel kind of uncomfortable.
Right, overwhelmed and overloaded. So I understand that you are using virtual reality, right, to do this? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we developed a virtual reality environment that tries to simulate the traditional treatment, which is called the snooze land. It's more affordable, cheaper. It doesn't require a physical space, and as you can see in the monitors, we can see here a child that is treated, and on the right side of the screen we can see the enabler side of this environment, enabling to customize the treatment for the exact necessities of the child.
Wow, this is amazing. And so this essentially allows these children to be or become accustomed to different environments, right?
Exactly.
Without actually taking them out of the environment. Very cool. All right, so is this available yet?
No, we are currently ongoing with the initial steps, the preliminary steps of development, and we currently deploy this system in an institution called Mamad Kalim, located in Jerusalem.
Okay.
So we have a few experiments that we already conducted. We are currently examining the commercial path, and I hope and think that the future is fascinating.
Well, absolutely. For those who are interested in investing or learning more, please check this company out. You guys are doing a beautiful thing that I think will help many, many lives. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Natasha, for inviting us.
All right. No surprise here, folks. Yet another hit Israeli TV series is headed for an American remake. HBO has just bought the rights to the acclaimed Israeli show Foria and is greenlighting an English-speaking adaptation. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the original version of Foria, the premise sounds absolutely insane. Think of it as Skins meet Train Spotting. The show ran for 10 episodes back in 2012, and it tells the story of troubled Israeli teens in the 90s getting into mischief. This is actually the second big deal for one of the writers of Foria, Daphne Levine, whose other major series, In Treatment, also scored an American remake at HBO. That deal closed back in 2008 and marked the beginning of a huge chapter in Israeli formats making their way to the rest of the world. A trend that continues today with award-winning shows like Fauda, Hostages, and Homeland. Another sign that Israeli TV may soon be taking over your Netflix is that Keshet International, one of Israel's biggest media companies, has just inked a $55 million investment deal. That kind of money means Israel is definitely about to make an even bigger splash in the global marketplace. All right, speaking of ways to find common ground, Israel might have just found the ultimate way to strengthen its bridges to its Arab neighbors: football, or as it's known to some of us, soccer. In a major first, Israel will broadcast the upcoming World Cup to Egypt and Jordan completely free of charge. As far as we're concerned, that's right up there with sharing its Netflix account. Neither of the two countries would have been able to watch this year's World Cup otherwise, because broadcasting the games requires a subscription to the Al Jazeera network, which is based in Qatar. Last year, Egypt joined the majority of the Gulf states in blockading Qatar and banned Al Jazeera from the country altogether back in 2013. Meaning there would be no World Cup for Egypt this time around, well, if it weren't for Israel. Israel's Khan News network purchased the rights to the World Cup for $7.8 million, but has agreed to transmit it free of charge to its Arab neighbors, complete with pre-game discussions and live commentaries in Arabic. Soccer is not only a huge deal here in the Middle East, this year's World Cup is actually even bigger than usual. That's because 4 Middle Eastern and North African teams will be competing for the trophy, a record high in World Cup history. So although some critics were a bit miffed that Arab audiences would have to get their soccer from Israel, tons and tons of fans have been rejoicing all over social media and praising Israel for letting them in on the fun. Talk about a touchdown. Oh wait, wrong football. The spring harvest season is now right around the corner, and farmers across the world are doing all they can to protect their crops from pests. Joining me in the studio now to tell us all about environmentally safe methods of pesticide is Dr. Shimon Steinberg, the Chief Scientist and Head of R&D at BioB. So I see you have brought bugs with you, and I'm very excited to see why. We have Emmanuel Kadosh from ILTV here with us too to witness this. Yes. So tell us exactly what BioB does.
BioB does for 35 years mass rears insects, beneficial insects, for biological pest control, for pollination, and recently also for food and feed.
Interesting.
But we are here for biological pest control. This is what we are doing at BioB since 1983.
So when you say biological, you're talking about environmentally friendly pesticides, right?
Absolutely.
So what do we have here in front of us?
We are talking about natural phenomena like predatory bugs and predatory mites and parasitic wasps that control pests in a natural way. So what we are doing at our place, we are mass rearing them, putting them in the bottle, and they'll sell them. We can sell them to farmers, but we can sell them to the home and retail market.
So you have
So
you have baby spiders in here?
Yes, you can have a look at them.
I
just deliberately put them in a relatively warm environment. They all swarmed into. Have a look at this.
Oh wow!
Look how many of them there should be 4,000 of them. And you can sprinkle them over a strawberry crop in your garden, and we offer them both to of course, to the professional farmers, but also for the home and retail market
Very
in Israel.
So what do they do? What do these?
They hunt and track and kill spider mites. Spider mites are the bad ones.
Are the bad ones?
Exactly.
And then you have some other bugs here too, right?
Yes, and to fight aphids, for example, which is another nuisance bug for plants. Wow, that's going to be a lot. Look how many parasites, small little parasitic wasps that we are releasing in your garden. Yes, and even lady beetles. You see.
Oh,
not only those, the orange one with the 7 spots are lady beetles. These are also lady beetles that kill mealybugs.
All right,
so people, for example, at home, buy them a lot through a retailer.
So this could be for your average gardener, right? So somebody who's has plants.
Gardeners and really homeowners for all over Israel at the moment now can take a snapshot of the pest, send it to one of our experts, and the expert said whatever they should purchase.
Cool.
And in a retailer, they just purchase it via the internet or directly within 48 hours.
All right,
they get
this
good
is
ones
very cool. And again, it's very important that we find environmentally friendly options or pesticides.
Saves a lot of chemical treatments. That's a major issue.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your bugs with us.
You're more than welcome.
Emmanuel's very happy, and now it's time for our story.
Yes.
All right. Now, guys, it's pretty hard to turn on the radio here in the Holy Land without hearing the Israeli duo Static and Vanel. Well, it looks like they'll be gracing radio stations all across the United States now, too. And ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here with more details. But first, let's take a look at one of their songs.
Tudo
Amazing. I always dance when
Exactly.
I hear
You
their
can't not dance when you hear that song. It's one of the biggest hits in Israel, and it was also, very international when Tudo Bom came out. In Brazil, it kind of put Static and Benel on the map.
International stage.
Yes, and we're clearly not the only ones that love them. American-Israeli producer and investor Chaim Saban has recently just signed both of the duo and their producer Joldi to his Capitol Records label.
Absolutely, and this is a huge deal because it means that this duo is now going to be performing in the U.S. as well.
In English. They're set to produce 7 albums in the next 10 years. Their first English song, is set to be released in this July, and 2 of their songs are going to be actually recorded next week here in Israel with their producer Joldi, which are really exciting,
Yeah, well, I know we all want to listen to. I also heard that they're going to be working with a very special woman. Let's see, Emily Wright. She's written songs for Katy Perry, Britney Spears, Kesha, kind of all the big Miley Cyrus.
Exactly.
So for sure, we're going to hear a hit or two coming from these guys.
It's definitely going to be a hit. We can count on it for sure. She's coming here next week. Reportedly next week, they're set to start filming. They're set to start recording and producing their 2 new songs. And Joldi, whose real name is Yarden Peleg, which is their producer, which kind of really pushed them over the edge. He has that really good ear for hit songs. Yeah. He was actually really excited. He posted on his Instagram, "Never ever give up on your dreams. I'm really proud to be producing them here in Israel and in the U.S."
Well, this is again a really big deal for not only the 2 of them, but for Israel itself. Again, like you said, that song Tudo Bom that we just heard went viral worldwide. It was like a huge hit in Brazil, and I think actually Static was adopted from Brazil to Israel. So
exactly, there was a little background. He kind of wanted to put a little Portuguese into the song, and it really,
And a lot of their songs do that. They take different cultures.
Definitely.
They have a recent song called Namaste, which refers to Indian culture as well.
So they're definitely going to be big. I can't wait to hear what songs they do in English and how Americans take it. And
Absolutely. Well, we'll be waiting. Good luck, guys. Good luck. Thanks for joining us, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
All right, did you know that in between solving the universe and making goofy faces, Einstein also played the violin? The world-renowned genius got a handmade violin as a gift from a member of the Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra back in 1933. And get this, Einstein famously gave it to the son of a janitor while he worked at Princeton. Well, that very violin has just sold for over $500,000.
That sum is over 3 times the instrument's estimated value. But who knows, maybe it's just teeming with leftover strands of genius still waiting to be played. The auction world has actually been ablaze with artifacts from the Jewish genius's life as of late. Last week, one of his letters discussing a scientific theory sold for a whopping $100,000 in a Jerusalem auction. But perhaps biggest of all is the news that in just a few months, a collection of Einstein's personal letters to his sister will go up for bid. This will be the first time many of those letters will ever be seen. But auctioneers have already granted an exclusive look at some of the contents, which reveal the physicist far more personally than ever before. In one letter, he laments how the best of his years may be behind him. In another, he muses about the pros and cons of achieving so much global fame. And in yet another, he vents his fears about the growing Nazi presence in pre-World War II Germany. Here's a theory Einstein himself would support. I predict this trove of Einstein goods will definitely go for big once the auction opens up this May.
Here comes our Hebrew word of the day. It looks like the Israeli government managed to clinch a deal and avoid a last-minute crisis. That's why today's word is mashber, which means crisis, as in mashber averted. What defines a mashber or a crisis kind of depends on who you ask. I most definitely agree that the government falling apart certainly constitutes quite a mashber. But some start to scream mashber when their gas tank hits almost empty, and others enter mashber mode when they're a few minutes late to a movie. I try to keep my cool no matter what mashber I find myself in, but when I get hungry, let's just say, you better get out of my way unless you're looking for a mashber. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be clear and warm with a low of about 53 or 12 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow should be mostly cloudy, but with little change in temperatures. The high is expected to be around 69 or 21 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.43 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.